Imagine a world not shaped by destruction and exile, but by coexistence and reverence. Picture ancient Rome, not as the brutal conqueror of Judea, but as a willing ally. Instead of legions tearing down sacred walls and torching the Second Temple, envision synagogues rising proudly next to the towering columns of Roman temples. In this alternate Rome, the hum of prayer in Latin intertwines with the melodic chants of Hebrew. Now close your eyes and see this. Jewish scholars, robed in traditional garments, walking confidently through the marble halls of the Senate. Not as second-class citizens or tolerated minorities, but as equals, respected voices shaping law, ethics, and philosophy alongside Stoics and statesmen. Imagine Talmudic reasoning influencing Roman justice, while Roman discipline refines Jewish governance. In this Rome, Hebrew doesn't remain confined to a distant desert province. It becomes a language of empire, inscribed on coins, echoed in academies, whispered in legal chambers from Britannia to Alexandria. A world where the Torah isn't hidden or hunted, but preserved in imperial archives alongside Cicero and Virgil. What if, just what if, the Roman Empire, in all its might and reach, had chosen to embrace Judaism rather than persecute it? Welcome to Timelines Rewritten, the digital arena where history isn't just studied, it's reimagined. Here, we don't simply recount battles and dates, we pull at the delicate threads of time to ask, what if? What if a single decision, a different alliance, a moment of tolerance instead of tyranny, had changed the course of civilizations? In today's journey, we step into one of the most consequential crossroads in human history, a moment where empires met prophecy and faith met force. We ask a bold, provocative question: what if the Roman Empire had accepted Judaism? This isn't just about religious doctrine or the fate of one people, it's about the tectonic shifts that would ripple through continents and centuries. If Judaism had been embraced by Rome rather than suppressed, how might this have transformed the very idea of religious tolerance in the ancient world? Might we have seen a Roman society that valued diversity in belief, that set a precedent for coexistence rather than conquest? And then, what of Christianity? That fiery new sect rising from Jewish roots, which gained strength in part because of persecution. How would its trajectory have changed if Rome had never targeted its parent religion? Would Jesus' message still have spread as a grassroots rebellion? Or would Christianity have remained a minor voice in a symphony already resonating with Jewish thought? We're not just speculating, we're unraveling the DNA of Western civilization and asking, how different would our world be if Rome had extended not a sword, but a hand of solidarity? But let's push this thought experiment even further. If the Roman Empire had chosen Judaism over polytheism, and if Christianity had never risen to become the dominant spiritual and political force in the West, what kind of world would Islam have emerged into? Without a powerful Christian Europe to define itself against, would Islam have followed the same course? Would the great Islamic caliphates still have surged across North Africa, Persia, and Spain? Or would their rise have looked entirely different in a world where Rome's spiritual center was grounded in Jewish law and ethics? This isn't just about alternate theology, it's about the dominoes of history falling in entirely new directions. Consider the ripple effects. The Crusades might never have happened. The Renaissance, so heavily influenced by Christian patronage and tension with the Islamic world, might have emerged under a very different banner. The Enlightenment, with its roots in both classical and Abrahamic thought, might have drawn on an entirely different set of traditions. How would science have evolved without the Church's hold over Europe's intellectual life? Would Jewish scholarship, long suppressed under both pagan and Christian rule, have flourished and led the way in early scientific inquiry? Would philosophy have advanced differently, infused more directly with Talmudic reasoning and Greco-Roman logic merged under a unified imperial culture? And what of modern nations? Our borders, our conflicts, Even our constitutions are in many ways the legacy of religious tensions and cultural clashes shaped by centuries of Christian and Islamic power struggles. Strip that dynamic away, and you're looking at a completely different geopolitical map. This isn't just a revision of religious history, it's a total reimagining of how humanity defines its politics, its culture, its sense of power and self. It's a reweaving of the very fabric of identity across 2,000 years. Let's take a journey back, over 2,000 years, into the heart of the Roman Republic transforming into an empire. The 1st century BCE. Rome is booming. Its legions march across continents, absorbing provinces and peoples under its banner. And among these is Judea, a small but fiercely independent land where the people do not bow to idols, do not adopt the gods of Olympus, and do not easily submit to foreign rule. Tensions rise. Uprisings erupt, fueled by a burning desire for autonomy, for the right to worship one God freely. The Romans, ever the conquerors, respond the only way they know how, with brutal suppression. But what if history took a breath, paused, and turned down a different road? Picture this: Augustus, the first true emperor of Rome, master of consolidation and genius of statecraft, sees an opportunity not in force, but in diplomacy. Instead of regarding Judaism as a seditious cult, or a stubborn backwater belief system, he recognizes it as a deeply rooted, intellectually rich, and morally disciplined tradition. He chooses appeasement, not out of weakness, but out of pragmatism. He drafts a new imperial decree: Judaism is not to be merely tolerated, it is to be protected, honored, institutionalized. Like the cults of Jupiter or Mithras, synagogues receive state patronage. Jewish festivals are granted public recognition. The Sanhedrin is permitted to operate under imperial sanction. Augustus, perhaps impressed by the discipline of the Jewish Sabbath, the integrity of their legal codes, the unity forged through centuries of exile and scripture, folds them into the Roman machine. Not as a threat, but as an asset. Herod's temple stands, not as a symbol of defiance, but as a monument of imperial pride. And when the tensions of 70 CE approach, there is no siege, no fire, no desecration. Instead, there's reconstruction, preservation, and partnership. And in this new Rome, one that values order above all, Judaism is not a rebellious footnote. It becomes a pillar of civic life. Synagogues rise beside amphitheaters. The Torah is debated alongside Roman law. The children of Judea grow up Roman citizens, not insurgents, but equals. It's not just an alternate religious reality, it's a whole new empire. But this raises one of the most intriguing questions in our alternate timeline: what becomes of Christianity? Remember, Christianity didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was born from Jewish thought, steeped in the messianic expectations of Second Temple Judaism. Jesus of Nazareth was a Jewish teacher. His earliest followers were Jews. But what propelled Christianity into the historical spotlight wasn't just theology, it was trauma. It was the crucible of Roman oppression. In our known timeline, Rome's harsh treatment of Jewish populations created fertile ground for spiritual alternatives. Christianity offered something radical, an intimate, personal connection with the divine, a kingdom not of this earth. For the oppressed, it was hope. For the persecuted, it was salvation. And with every execution, every martyrdom, it became stronger. The blood of the martyrs, as they say, was the seed of the church. But in this world, there is no great Jewish revolt. No siege of Jerusalem. No flaming temple. No mass displacement of Jews into foreign lands. Judaism thrives within the Roman framework, respected, visible, influential. The trauma that shaped early Christian identity simply doesn't exist in the same way. Without that, Christianity faces a very different road. It might remain just another splinter group among many in the vibrant spiritual landscape of the empire. A sect focused on a charismatic preacher, competing with Stoics, mystery cults, and the rising prestige of Judaism itself. Its claims, especially the idea that Jesus fulfilled Jewish prophecy, may carry less weight in a world where Judaism hasn't been fractured and scattered. And then there's Constantine. In our timeline, the 4th century emperor's dramatic conversion to Christianity catapulted the religion into global dominance. But in this alternate Rome, Judaism already holds institutional power, and Christianity, lacking widespread persecution, lacking the sense of underground resistance and triumph, never develops the same mystique. Without the mythos of martyrdom, without the galvanizing force of state opposition, Christianity may remain a minor sect. A footnote in religious history. Or perhaps, it evolves into something entirely different, less hierarchical, less universal, and far less political. In this Rome, there is no Pope, no Vatican, no Holy Roman Empire. And the course of European history begins to look unrecognizably different. Now, imagine the long-term implications of a Roman-Jewish alliance, not just in religion, but in the very fabric of society. We're talking about a transformation that would reach into classrooms, courtrooms, and kitchens. Education becomes the first frontier. Picture Jewish yeshivas operating not in isolation, but as respected institutions within the Roman system. Torah study no longer confined to Judea or scattered diasporas, but taught alongside Roman rhetoric, philosophy, and civic duty. Jewish ethics, focused on justice, community, and responsibility, blend with Roman ideals of virtue, order, and republicanism. You get a hybrid educational tradition, one where Plato and Moses are quoted in the same breath. And the law. Roman law, the backbone of Western jurisprudence, doesn't evolve in isolation. Instead, it begins to absorb elements of halakha, the detailed Jewish legal tradition that governs everything from business ethics to daily rituals. Legal pluralism becomes normalized. Courts recognize Jewish legal principles as legitimate precedents. Over time, concepts like social justice, property rights, and community responsibility take on a new, richer meaning, filtered through this dual tradition. Practices once condemned by Rome begin to shift. Circumcision, formerly banned under emperors like Hadrian, is no longer taboo. Instead, it becomes a recognized cultural rite, maybe even a mark of Roman Jewish identity. Sabbath observance, initially foreign to Roman hustle and commerce, starts influencing labor structures. Workers enjoy mandated rest days, perhaps even before Christianity codifies the concept of the weekend. Food is transformed too. Kosher laws, slowly, subtly, begin to shape Roman dining culture. Certain ritual restrictions on pork or seafood might fade in practical enforcement, but linger in culinary philosophy. Think of a Roman Jewish cuisine that elevates ritual cleanliness and ingredient sourcing into a shared imperial ethic, foreshadowing modern ideas about food safety and ethical consumption. And as Judaism spreads under the protection of Roman legions and the legitimacy of Roman law, it changes. It absorbs. It adapts. It evolves. Hellenistic thought, Latin language, Roman architecture, all become part of the Jewish experience. But at its core, it remains steadfastly monotheistic. Rome, once the land of 1,000 gods, becomes the world's first monotheistic superpower. Not by conquest of belief, but by evolution of culture. And here's the most striking part. Monotheism, an idea once radical, marginal, even dangerous, goes global not in the medieval era, not through crusades or conquests, but through administrative edict, cultural diplomacy, and imperial prestige. Centuries earlier, the world turns on a different axis, and religion, law, and everyday life are never the same again. But this alternate history isn't just a theological detour. Its implications ripple far beyond religion, into geopolitics, social structures, and even the birth of the modern world. If Judaism becomes mainstream across the Roman Empire, from Britannia to Carthage, from Hispania to Egypt, then the religious landscape of Europe and North Africa is fundamentally different. The very idea of Christendom never takes root. There is no dominant Christian Europe. And without a Christian identity to rally around, the Crusades, a defining series of military and religious campaigns, may never ignite. That means no bloody sieges of Jerusalem. No centuries-long hostility between the Christian West and the Islamic East. The shared Abrahamic lineage might be emphasized over the differences. The Holy Land remains a complex, but diplomatically managed space, not a battleground of empires and popes. And what about anti-Semitism? In our timeline, it is one of history's most persistent and tragic currents. Fueled by centuries of theological rivalry, scapegoating, and isolation. But in this alternate world, Jews are not the perennial other. They are the cultural mainstream. Their festivals are national holidays. Their sages are imperial advisors. Their laws shape civic order. Anti-Semitism, if it exists at all, is vastly diminished, perhaps redirected into different forms of tension, but never institutionalized in the same way. Modern Western identity itself takes on a new shape. Instead of being rooted in Greco-Roman thought refracted through Christian dogma, it's rooted in Greco-Roman thought shaped by Jewish ethics. Ideas like charity, justice, humility before the law, they are not just religious values. They are societal foundations, taught in every Roman Jewish school from Gaul to Alexandria. And then there's Islam. It still rises in the 7th century, emerging from the Arabian Peninsula with its own powerful monotheism and revolutionary vision. But now it enters a world where Judaism isn't a marginalized, persecuted faith, it's the state-supported religion of vast imperial provinces. The Abrahamic rivalry, which in our world took on the form of Christian versus Muslim, shifts dramatically. Islam confronts not a fragmented post-Roman world, but a stable Jewish-Roman civilization with deeply entrenched monotheistic structures. Theological dialogues take a different shape. Political alliances follow new lines. Perhaps, instead of centuries of conflict, we see theological councils between imams and rabbis sanctioned by imperial courts. And what about science? Judaism places enormous value on learning, literacy, and preservation of sacred texts. In a Roman Empire that supports Jewish scholarly tradition, that emphasis could become policy. Libraries flourish. Multilingual scholars bridge Hebrew, Latin, Greek, and Aramaic. The Talmudic method of debate and reasoning finds common ground with Roman logic and Hellenistic inquiry. The result? The scientific revolution doesn't wait for the Renaissance. It emerges centuries earlier, perhaps in the academies of a Romanized Judea. Astronomy, medicine, ethics, and natural philosophy evolve hand in hand with law and theology. Instead of Galileo gazing at the stars in 17th century Florence, imagine a rabbi astronomer in 5th century Caesarea mapping the cosmos by candlelight, under Roman patronage. In this timeline, the torch of reason is passed much earlier, and it burns in entirely different hands. Now let's pass the torch to you. What do you think would have happened if the Roman Empire had truly embraced Judaism? Would the Renaissance, so deeply tied to classical revival and Christian patronage, have still emerged? Or would a different kind of intellectual awakening have taken its place, centuries earlier or later? And what about modern democracies? Would the philosophical seeds of civic equality, legal accountability, and ethical governance, so central to Jewish law and Roman civic tradition, have merged to create a new model of statehood long before the Enlightenment? We're not just asking questions. We're inviting a conversation. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Agree, disagree, speculate. Debate is not only welcome here, it's the heart of what we do. And if you find yourself drawn to the roads not taken, to the intriguing shadows of history that never came to be, then you're in the right place. Hit that like button, share your theories, and subscribe to Timelines Rewritten, the place where imagination meets historical scholarship. Because sometimes, to understand the world we live in, we have to explore the worlds that might have been. History, when you really stop and think about it, is not some rigid, unalterable path. It's a web, a complex network of choices, accidents, alliances, and beliefs. Every turning point, every decision, every twist of fate sets a new direction, pushing humanity forward, or veering it off course. When we ask, what if, we're not just playing with fantasy. We're flexing our minds, challenging the idea that the present is inevitable. We're probing the very nature of history itself, how fragile it is, and how fascinating. We're reminding ourselves that the world we live in is not some linear, predetermined outcome, but a collection of potentialities, any one of which could have altered everything. So, the next time someone tells you history is boring, ask them to imagine this. What if Rome had embraced the Jews instead of driving them out? What would that have meant for the world as we know it today? For religion, politics, science, culture. It's not just a question, it's a doorway to a different kind of thinking. And the more we explore these, what ifs, the more we understand the vast and unpredictable nature of our shared human journey. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through alternate realities. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to subscribe to Timelines Rewritten. There's always another world to discover, where imagination meets historical scholarship. And remember, while the past may be written, its possibilities, they are still being written.